Everybody, welcome to Pick Dr. Osborne's Brain. Welcome back. We have a great live Q&A for you today. If you've got nutrition questions and you'd like me to entertain and answer those, go ahead and start typing those in now, and I'll do my best to get them answered. If you missed our Tuesday show on Dr. Osborne's Zone, I did a fantastic interview with Dr. Kenobi on seed oils. And it's one I would highly encourage you to go back and watch if you haven't already watched it. Some fantastic information there that you'll want to apply in your life to improve your health. So let's dive into our questions. What are your thoughts on a ghee butter? I like to use ghee for cooking. So it depends on whether or not you're reactive to dairy. Many people are. And so that would be something to consider. It also depends on the quality of the ghee. Is the ghee derivative of A1 or A2 type of dairy? A1 dairy can mimic gluten. So if you're gluten sensitive, not so great. I wouldn't recommend it. A2 ghee, on the other hand, as long as you're not reactive to dairy itself, might be something that you could consider using. So it just depends on the individual. I think A2 ghee would be fine for a lot of folks, again, without a dairy allergy. If you want to get more nuanced into dairy, you can check out my crash course on dairy and do a deeper dive on that topic. Let's see here. Is flaxseed oil okay to eat? Flaxseed oil, any kind of, so let's just define a general basic rule, because Eric's asking this question, but I think I see a lot of others asking, is this oil okay? Is that oil okay? If it's a seed oil, flax, sunflower, grapeseed, etc., I don't recommend using those. If you use them rarely or sparingly, occasionally, but if you're using them as staple foods in your diet, bad idea. Here's why I would discourage it. So number one, they're unsaturated oils. Unsaturated oils means they're not saturated with hydrogen. Hydrogen is something that will stabilize an oil and prevent it from turning rancid or oxidizing. Well, these seed oils are naturally unsaturated oil. That's why they're liquid at room temperature. Any oil that's liquid at room temperature, you can pretty much ensure is unsaturated. Now, when you have an unsaturated oil liquid at room temperature, once you open the bottle, the oxygen is going to get in there, light's going to get in there, and that oil is going to start oxidizing rather rapidly. Unsaturated oils are not stable, so they deteriorate very quickly, and they rancidify very quickly. And when you put them in a high heat environment where there's more temperature change to the north, then what you get is an oil that deteriorates and oxidizes, and when you eat it, it promotes inflammation. Now, beyond that, that's general for all seed oils, period, including flax. That being said, are flax okay? Could you eat flax seed as an example? Yeah, you could put flax in a smoothie if that's something that you wanted to do. And there are, some omega-3 or at least pre-omega-3 in flax. What we call linolenic acid is a precursor to omega-3, and it's in flax. So flax would be one that has a better omega profile than, say, a lot of the other seed oils like grapeseed oil or sunflower oil. Because that's part of the other problem with oils is the 6:3 ratio. The omega-6 to omega-3 fat ratio in these oils is very heavily weighted toward the omega-6 side, and omega-6 oils and too great of an abundance in your cell membranes will make you more inflamed, will lead to more inflammatory response than what's necessary to maintain your cells. And so this is, part of why we think these seed oils can be so bad for people. Okay, so Belinda says, dumbfounded by the seed oil interview you did. I have a question about omega-6 and omega-3 balance. At the moment, both my husband and myself, 55 years old, have a high LDL level. Regardless of how we got there, my question is, will taking omega-3s lower our omega-6 levels? No, taking omega-3 doesn't lower your omega-6. Taking your omega-3 increases your omega-3. but it does not lower your omega-6. The only way you lower your omega-6 is by not eating as much omega-6. It takes about 2 to 3 days to normalize omega-3s. In our clinical testing, when we start supplementing somebody with higher doses of omega-3, we're going to see that shift in their cell membrane very quickly, within days. So part 2 to this question, do we just stop taking any and using any seed oils, including olive oil, or use only butter? I'm not opposed as much to olive oil, although it's a little bit more stable in terms of its oxidizing effect, provided you're buying it in either very dark glass or a can. It's more stable than these other seed oils in that regard. How long in general do you think omega-6 levels might stabilize naturally? Again, in a few days. We get your cell membranes kind of more stable in terms of the omega-6-3 ratio. There's a test that you can ask your doctor to run. It's called an omega check. And what it does is it measures the concentration or the percentage of omega-3s and omega-6 in your cell membranes. Particularly in this test, it's measuring your red blood cell membranes. So when you're looking at your omega-6-3 ratio, you really want to be under 4. If you're not under 4, consider that your body is going to be more prone to an inflammatory response than if it's above 4. So Sarah's asking, I've used refrigerated organic flax from barley for the Buckwheat protocol and noticed improvements. What do you think about the Buckwheat protocol? I think probably, Sarah, you would have noticed the same improvements if you would have taken an omega-3, and that probably the reason you experienced benefit is less to do with flax and more to do with the omega-3 precursors in flax. Again, I'm not a fan of protocol. Protocol means that everybody is one size fits all and everybody does it. And I don't believe in that. I think that people are too unique and different to just kind of lobby everybody into the same hole. That being said, again, going back to testing, I like to test. I like to be objective. I like to see where a person's at so that we can make intelligent decisions about what kinds of diet and lifestyle changes that person should make, as opposed to just trying to put them all into the same category. How long does it take the body to rid itself of seed oils? Nobody really knows. There's not like a good question. I see that the levels of 6-3 ratios can start to correct within a few days if we're actually doing objective lab testing. But question is, there's fat in more than just your red blood cells. And so this test is an insight into red blood cells, but not necessarily an insight into the storage of omega-6 in your fat cells directly. And so you might have, especially if you're overweight, you've got a heavy amount of weight on you, you might have a high contribution of omega-6 storage in those cells. And that could take time. It could take the time that it requires for you to normalize your body weight, right? So, let's say you're 30 pounds overweight and it takes you half a year to get that off. It's about what you're going to look at least in theory. I don't think there's any other way or any other research where somebody has said it takes X amount of time. But again, if we're thinking about it logically, that's the way I would think about it. What about high oleic seed oils? Good option. So oleic acid, you don't need seed oils for oleic acid. Oleic acid is omega-9, for those of you who don't know. And the best source of oleic acid in the diet is going to come from just fresh nuts. I say fresh whole foods, right? So you could get it from, all the varieties of nuts. Almond is particularly rich in it, as are avocados. So if you really want to get oleic acid, and this is true, so some of you have done our nutrition testing online, and you may have found that your omega-9 is low or your oleic acid is low, and that dietary whole foods are the best place to get oleic acids or omega-9s in your diet. And there's an abundance in avocado and almonds. If you're oxalate sensitive, make sure your avocados are ripe and be cautious of almonds. Do good oils like avocado and olive oil turn bad with cooking? Olive oil certainly does, depending on the temperature that you get the oil to. If you're cooking with olive oil and the oil starts to create a smoke, it's hitting what's called a smoke point, then you're destroying the quality of the olive oil that makes it healthy. Olive oil is best on like salads or other raw types of dishes. And it's not so great with cooking. That's not to say you couldn't use low temperatures to cook with a little olive oil. Avocado's got a higher smoke point, but I'm a bigger fan of using animal-based oils for cooking because they're naturally saturated with hydrogen, and they're naturally going to have a higher smoke point and not tend to be quite as oxidative. Is it true that single source olive oil is safe to ingest as long as it gets solid when refrigerated? I mean, that's a weird question. I mean, a single source is better than a mixture of source from all over the place where you have a harder time tracking the quality of the oil. A lot of olive oil is kind of cut, so to speak, with canola and corn and other not so good oils. And so it's always best to have a single source just to prevent or reduce the potential that you might be getting an inferior product. Can we do something to detoxify from the unhealthy oils we have ingested in addition to no grain no pain diet? Best thing to do is, the number one rule for detoxification is to not retox, right? So change your diet. Your body's naturally going to use what you put in your mouth to build itself, right? And so remember, all your tissues have a turnover time. They all break down and are rebuilt with time. So if you're trying to get your ratios better, then stop eating the junk, right? That's number one for the detox. Number two is, engage in physical activity. Super critical. So many people want to change their diet and ignore the physical activity spectrum of health improvement. And not to say that you're one of them, but this is just an area that I see as a weakness for many people that come to see me. And so get to physical activity, because if you're carrying extra weight, if you're trying to detox from those unhealthy oils being stored in your fat cells, then you need to get rid of or diminish quantitatively the amount of storage of fat that you have, right? And the only way to do that is calorie deprivation, right? Combined with activity. So you eat less food while simultaneously generating more energy from physical motion and movement, i.e. exercise. And over time, your body will break that fat down as a source of energy and move it out of your body. And then what you replace it with, if you're eating well, will be healthy oil and healthy fat. What's your opinion on soap made with seed oil? I don't have a problem with that. Saponification using oils, you're not eating that. You're not eating the soap. And soap's job predominantly is to emulsify the oils on your skin and pull them off. I think if anything around soap, it's that people have a tendency to soap too frequently, too often, and forget that those oils that your skin naturally produces are extremely healthy, prevent your skin from being dry and protect your skin, but also house your microbiome of your skin. So people over soap a lot. And this is what, my opinion, why we see so many people really struggle with dry skin. It's over soaping of the oil production. So nothing necessarily wrong with the seed oil that's used in the soap producing process, but we just say don't over soap. People taking 2-3 showers a day, my opinion, that's hyper hygiene, creates a problem, can create a problem for you. Carnivore for 6 months, can I expect liver spots to fade? Not necessarily. Carnivore is not a cure-all diet. Carnivore may not be the carnivore restrictions that you're following may not have really anything to do with why you have liver spots. There may be something completely different that's damaging your liver, leading to that. So ultimately, that's the right question to ask: is what is it that's contributing to the liver issue that you have, so that your skin is manifesting that. And if it's food like gluten, then yeah, maybe the carnivore diet will help. But if it's an environmental toxin that you're being exposed to, or something else environmentally that is slowing down the functionality of your liver, or if you're on multiple medications, you're probably not going to see the change that you'd like to see. had an anaphylactic event last weekend, which I believe was to shrimp, besides discovering that I have a mutation in my histamine gene. Do you think a shrimp krill oil omega-3 supplement could have been? I think the krill supplements are junk. I don't think they're aligned with human physiology. I know a lot of people are out there pushing krill oil as like a superior oil. But I think that any benefit of krill, there are some antioxidant benefits that oil has, but you should be eating, humans don't jump into cold waters with their mouth open and eat microscopic krill as a general rule. That's just not in our food chain. So I'd say you're better off getting, the astaxanthin and the other, very helpful antioxidants from a fish who eats krill, and your diet, as opposed to supplementing with krill oil. I've just never seen krill oils be super effective clinically, and I've certainly never seen them do anything for a person's omega-3 status at all. Like it's like doesn't even move the needle when we do lab testing on people who take krill oil. As far as should you take omega-3 or should you not take omega-3, and can you get just your omega-3 from your diet? You can get a lot of omega-3 from your diet. Grass-fed meats, grass-fed, grass-finished, wild-caught fish. You'd have to have ample quantities of those to get adequate omega-3. If we're talking about EPA and DHA now as defining omega-3, and not talking about like the precursor omega-3 that you get from flax and chia, which is called linolenic acid. But food is always the place you should start. I don't disagree with that thought at all. I would just say if you're eating those foods in abundance and you're finding your omega-3 levels are quite low, then you might also consider supplementation. Is it true that if a seed oil is cold pressed and not commercially processed with chemicals, that it can be used for cooking and baking safely? No, no. Depends on the seed oil, the quality of the seed oil. Just because it's cold pressed doesn't mean it's ideal for cooking. And going back to what I said earlier about seed oils as a whole, is it safe to ingest foods made with a less than 5% gluten content? No, not if you're celiac, not if you're gluten sensitive. Let's see, what's the treatment of insulin resistance? I'm skinny and exercise every day and consume a healthy diet. If all those things are true, Medina, then I would challenge what you say about a healthy diet, because healthy for it's a relative term. When I see this all the time in my practice, where people come in and say, "Yeah, my diet's really healthy," and they're eating granola bars and they're eating, whole grain cereal, and they're gluten sensitive, and so yeah, they may consider their diet to be healthy, but it's not for them. And so healthy diets, unless if you're struggling with insulin resistance and you're doing exercise and you're thin and you're consuming what you think are healthy foods, then I would argue that the foods that you're consuming are probably not healthy for you, and that's leading to, in part, some of your insulin resistance. You might also be over consuming carbohydrates, which can contribute to it. And you might have a vanadium or a chromium or a magnesium or zinc deficiency, which can also contribute to insulin resistance as well. So looking at your micronutrient status might be super enlightening and helpful in that regard. Is organic refined coconut okay to use? Is the processing good, bad, or indifferent? Look, I'm going to make a statement a lot of you aren't going to like to hear. I just don't recommend processed oils to any great degree in your diet as a staple. And that includes the ones that are so-called healthy, like coconut oil. And there's arguments about palm oil, but many people will use it. But if you're talking about taking a whole food and extrapolating down the oil from it and then putting that in a bottle and then using that for a variety of different things, to ingest your food, and that's a staple in your diet, it's a bad idea. It's processed food, and try to minimize that. I hope that helps. Since seed oils are so terrible, why haven't the companies been forced to remove the heart healthy logos and put a warning for basically all disease known to mankind? Because they pay off the American Cardiology and heart associations and other places, and they basically just go pay these companies a bunch of money to put the seal of approval on it. It's all about the money, and it's not about the health. It never has been. I mean, just look at the history of medicine and the history of health advice just in the U.S. alone. We did a show on that, didn't we, Mel? Let's post that for that individual, and go back and watch it. I mean, I always find it, whatever the general trend of the day is probably wrong. As far when I say that, it's probably wrong in terms of the masses following it blindly. There've been so many opportunities at wrong data becoming popular, and people falling victim to the information, and then doing that for 10 years until all of a sudden now we realize that was a bad idea, and there's enough overwhelming anecdote but also enough science behind whatever that advice was as being not great. I mean, remember, cigarette smoking used to be promoted by doctors. I use ground flax and chia in organic oatmeal. Is this safe to use daily? Flax and chia are fine. I would question the oatmeal. It's a grain. If you're gluten sensitive, it's not a good idea, even if the oatmeal says certified organic, gluten-free, because there's no such thing as gluten-free oatmeal. Avenin is the name of the gluten found in oatmeal. And again, if you're gluten sensitive, it's just a bad idea. So many people are gluten sensitive. So many people have celiac disease and eat oatmeal because the bottle or the container says gluten-free. And that's, in my opinion, that's a bad idea. We use macadamia nut oil. Looking forward to hearing what you recommend. Not sure about what that question is. If you're asking me whether or not I recommend macadamia nut oil, macadamia oil is not super stable. It's going to oxidize very quickly. So as an oil, it's not something that I would really recommend to use in great quantities. Again, if you're using some of these oils kind of very occasionally, I don't think that's the end of your health, but these shouldn't be staple foods in your diet. Wondering about buckwheat. Buckwheat, if you're gluten sensitive, don't recommend it. A lot of the buckwheat products are cross-contaminated with gluten, and a lot of people have what's called molecular mimicry or cross-reactivity with buckwheat if you're also gluten sensitive. You want to make a salad dressing safely, extra virgin cold-pressed olive oil is a good option for salad. Can you explain oxidation as for a 5-year-old? Yeah, so oxidation is basically, it's the process whereby, well, as a 5-year-old, basically it internally rusts your mitochondria in your cell membranes. So it breaks them down and it ages you faster. So oxidation, basically it makes the fatty membranes around your cell and around the parts of your cell, and makes them break down faster. And when you have a high level of oxidation, basically you're going to age more quickly, and you're going to repair more slowly. Oxidation leads to inflammation, which don't hear me wrong. Inflammation is a good thing. However, too much inflammation becomes a bad thing, because if you're inflaming faster than you can repair, meaning you have a high oxidative rate, then you're going to start aging faster and developing disease more quickly. I don't know if that's 5-year-old enough for you, but let me know. Best advice for healing psoriasis. Best place to start, just generically, go to No Grain and go read No Grain, No Pain and apply the diet. If that's not working for you, get with a good functional doctor and have the appropriate testing done, where you measure your nutrients, where you measure your reactivity to food, reactivity to chemicals, or exposure to chemicals, and measure your microbiome. Those are all things that are necessary to understand if just generalized diet change doesn't work for you. Was a good total cholesterol and LDL. I don't believe in the cholesterol myth. I think the cholesterol, the hyper focus on cholesterol is the wrong angle. And I think if we look at that empirically, Judy, we've been treating what they're calling high cholesterol, which is also relative because when I started practice 23 years ago, high cholesterol was considered above 280. And then it moved to 250, then it moved to 220, then now it's going to 200, and now they're wanting to lower it again. And the only people that benefit from lowering what normal range of cholesterol is are the people that sell you medicines that lower your cholesterol. But if you look at the empirical data on cholesterol over the past 40 years plus, statin drugs have been the #1 sellers. And I think at last statistic, I think it was somewhere like of the adult population, it was like over 50% were taking statins. Now, that being a true statement, we don't see less heart disease. We don't see less stroke. We don't see less cardiovascular complications. So if cholesterol were the answer, then lowering it empirically, we would see so much less heart disease and complications of heart disease, and we just don't. So how do you continue to justify using using an antiquated model of theory around disease? I just don't buy into the whole cholesterol myth. And there's some really great books. One's called The Cholesterol Myth that I would encourage you to read. You can also check out, I've done some crash course videos doing a deeper dive on cholesterol as well, and that may be helpful for you. Is black seed oil safe since it does have omega-6? Look, I'm going to say it again. I'm not a fan of all these processed seed oils that people use. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't some anti-inflammatory properties of black seed oil, but I think so many people try to rely on them as a end-all be-all. When you're inflamed and you have a problem or pain and you're using black seed oil to try to ameliorate that, you're approaching your health from the wrong philosophy. That's my opinion. If you've got pain, you first identify why you have it. Reverse engineer your behavior. Black seed oil is a mask, as is Tylenol or aspirin or any other anti-inflammatory. Figure out what you're doing in your diet, lifestyle, or behavior that is driving those problems. My pantry's looking simpler by the day. It should be. Your pantry should be very identifiable as real food. What all do you recommend for cooking? As a general rule, when I'm cooking, I take the meat that I'm cooking and I'll take the oil off of that meat. Like if you're cooking, for example, some ground beef, take that oil, use it in your, you can use it, you can reuse it a few times. I wouldn't reuse it for a month or anything, but you can take that oil and reuse it. This is what our ancestors did repetitively. They even packed a lot of their foods and stored them in animal lard and animal fat to get through the winter months. And again, we're going back multiple hundreds, if not thousands of years. And many of these cultures there was not really a heart disease problem. I think the saturated animal fat theory of heart disease was widely misleading in the early 1900s. And I think the real reason why most people develop heart disease wasn't saturated fat, it was saturated vegetable fat, right? So when you take vegetable oil like corn and soy, which neither one of those are vegetables, so I don't know why they call it vegetable oil, but they do. But corn, soy, and canola are hydrogenated, meaning they take these naturally unsaturated oils and then they force hydrogen into them using a metal catalyst in a high heat process so that they're shelf stable. And then they say these are better for you than butter or animal fat. And when that happened in the early 1900s, heart disease went through the roof. So we know that the seed oils and the legume oils that are being used and touted as heart healthy are really part of the bigger problem, the scope of the problem with heart disease, and not animal fat. I think animal fat got a bad rap. It's not to say that you need to slug all the animal fat either, but I think if you're trying to lubricate your pan, a little bit of that will go a long way in that lubrication. If I'm detoxing from B6 toxicity, should I avoid beef organ supplements for a while? It's a hard question to answer. There's some B6 in the liver. Certainly, if you're using a liver pill supplement, it might not be a bad idea, Adam. But there's no way with beef organ or with not with beef organ, but with organ-based supplements, there's no way to quantify how much actual B6 is in them. So it's hard to really answer that question objectively. But if you're concerned, I certainly probably would look to avoid them. I've heard mixed info on canola oil. What's your take on that? Canola stands for Canadian Oil Company, and it's not, what canola oil is historically, they took rapeseed oil, which is poisonous to humans. The US government asked Canada to ramp up the production of rapeseed oil because it was used as a lubricant for tanks and other big equipment during the war. And after the war was over, Canada had invested all this infrastructure in growing canola, or not canola, but rapeseed. But it's poisonous to humans. But what they did is they figured out how to manipulate it, how to genetically modify it so that it was no longer poisonous to humans. And then instead of calling it rapeseed, they changed the name to canola. Canola means Canadian oil. And so duped most people. Canola is not the name of a plant. It's the trademark name of the manipulation, genetic manipulation of rapeseed, and it's a bad idea to eat it. That's my opinion on canola oil. Is it true that regular fed beef have high omega-6 level of fat? Yeah. So if you're eating, this is one of the problems with not eating grass-fed meats, grass-fed, grass-finished, is that if those animals are highly grain-fed as the predominant staple of food in their diet, then the fat meat in the meat actually changes. And so what you're getting is a meat that's higher in omega-6. And I think this is where a lot of the vegetarian advocates, when they're advocating that meat is harmful, they're not wrong in that regard. They're actually right. If you're eating feedlot beef, it's not good for you, and the fat concentration of it is omega-6 tilted, and so bad for your health. But if you're eating natural grass-fed, grass-finished, wild-caught, wild game, know that you're getting a nice balance instead of just a heavy omega-6 bomb. Is butter okay to cook with? I think I answered. Did I? I think I answered that earlier. A2 if you're not allergic to dairy. Where do we get animal-based oil for cooking? Well, you can render your own oil as you cook an animal, as you cook, any kind of beef or other type of animal. The fat can be taken and reused. You can also buy. I know in the stores today you can buy like duck fat in a jar, and a lot of people use duck fat. It's got a very unique and rich taste, and so they'll use it in a lot of French cuisine. Bacon fat or bacon grease is animal-based oil. Yeah, you just got to be careful with bacon because those pigs, a lot of times they just pump the grain in them. We have pigs on my farm, and one of the things we do is they're not grain fed, they're grass fed. They're a special kind of pig called a cooney, which is, I believe, a New Zealand word for fat and round. And so these pigs naturally eat grass. So that's what we feed them. We feed them grass. And so then, that's going to improve the fat concentration in their meat. And so when we harvest a pig and we save a lot of times we'll save the oil off of them and we'll reuse it to cook with too. Thoughts about coconut sugar? It's a processed sugar like any other sugar. It has a lower glycemic index, but it's still a sugar, and it's not something I would encourage you to eat on a regular basis. What can I do to help with BPPV, benign paroxysmal positional vertigo? You probably have a gluten sensitivity, Steve. Gluten can damage the vestibulocochlear nerve that feeds your inner ear. and helps your body understand balance. So that would be one thing. You might also follow up with your doctor to have, there's a maneuver that can be done if you have a crystal. You have crystals inside of these tubes inside of your ear that sometimes those crystals can get stuck. And so there's something called an Epley's maneuver. If you haven't tried it already, you can YouTube it, but your doctor, most doctors have trained in this and know how to do this maneuver on a patient. And so you might have that maneuver done and see if it's helpful for you. It can help get some of that. Sometimes those crystals get stuck, and sometimes it can help unjar them, and then the BPPV goes away. Read your book, Gluten-Free 9 Weeks. Are there vitamin mineral deficiencies with no gluten? And if I go dairy-free as well, is it critical to get calcium from other foods? I do take vitamin D3, K2 supplement, get sun. Yeah, you need to have foods in your diet that represent calcium, Judy. And so one of the easiest ways to get calcium is pressure cooked fish. The bones are so soft, you're getting all that calcium from the bone, and you don't choke on the bone, or the bone won't splinter you. And then there are a number of other foods that are rich in calcium as well. You might check out our calcium crash course. But are there nutritional deficiencies linked to the no gluten diet? No, not more so than any other. I would argue that you'll actually have better nutrition, and this is what I see clinically. People actually have less vitamin and mineral deficiencies when they go gluten-free because they're no longer eating a food that's poisoning them and inflaming them, and so they're no longer burning through nutrients in order to try to put that fire out in their bodies. So, but as with anything, there can be nutritional deficiencies. If you think about how people develop them, it's three big reasons. One, you're not eating enough of a food that contains the nutrient. Two, you have a problem in your GI tract, whether it be inflammation or gallbladder problem or prior gut damage or low stomach acid that is preventing you from fully digesting and absorbing your food effectively. And the nutrients from that food. And then number three, it's you have an underlying situation or condition, whether it's aggressive exercise or a bone break or a sprain, strain, or injury or an underlying inflammatory illness. And so metabolically, your body needs more nutrients to try to help you heal and repair that inflammatory damage. And so these are things that are pretty, across the board, pretty true in that regard to why people develop deficiencies. And so that's why I'm such a huge advocate of testing. That's why we've actually made nutritional testing available to the public because, as much as I've spent 23 years trying to train doctors to test nutrition in their practices. I spent 8 years running a high-level physician training program to help doctors understand this. And at the end of the day, even if they took the training program, they still undermined the power of nutrition to improve health. So I kind of abandoned trying to go through doctors and educating doctors as a sole agent to try to get this information into the hands of patients. And we just bypassed the doctors in this case and we made it publicly available because too many of you came back to me and said, my doctor won't order my B12 or my vitamin D or my zinc levels. And so now you can just go to Gluten-Free Society and you can do our INA test, our intracellular testing, which we've been using for decades clinically. And you can get that information and then you can eat and supplement according to what your body is lacking. And that to me is the best way to approach your nutrition, because otherwise you're shooting in the dark. You don't know whether you need something. You're guessing or speculating what you might need or might not need. And that gets in the weeds. Is it true that carbs or sugar will affect the body's bile output, in turn affecting bowel movements? I've not seen any research on carbohydrate directly affecting how the body produces bile. That's not to say it can't be a possibility, Daniel. I've just not seen any research to show that, that correlation directly. So, I would probably say no. One of the biggest things that affects bile is the development of fatty liver or damage directly to the liver. And in that regard, excessive carbs would be to look at your vitamin and mineral status as a whole. Those 4 categories, start with those 4 categories and nothing less. If you try to piecemeal those 4 categories, you're going to end up struggling trying to find an answer. At least that's my experience. I've seen so many people in my practice over the years have been just tried one of those things, but not all 4, and just really struggled to get an answer. Is your Alpha Max made with 100% R form ALA? Yes. Where can I find good liquid fish oil supplement? Gluten-free Society. It's called Omega Max, and it's liquid. So what's the best supplement combo that can help a malnourished, tube-fed 85-year-old strengthen and decrease excess mucus production? Tube feed. Well, change the tube feed. You know, that's a tough one. But you know, if the tube feed is rice syrup, that's sugar. Pea protein is crap. As far as like if that's the only thing that this person is being tube fed is getting. And then various oils, those oils are probably seed oils, and they're probably genetically modified, and they're probably contaminated with glyphosate, among other nefarious pesticide, herbicide concoctions. So change the tube feed, and you'll change that person's life. You'll change that person's health. Those tube feeds, like a lot of those tube feeds are just horrible. And they're, you know, because they're, you know, if the diet's not right, no amount of supplementation is going to fix it. Now, if the person can swallow at all, you know, you might consider a good multivitamin like multi-nutrients or ultra nutrients, but the tube feed has to change. Which oil should I use to cook my omelets? Yeah, I mean, lard or tallow would be perfectly fine. I noticed that having white rice and bananas calms my UC flare. Is there any science behind it? No, not really. I mean, there's what's called the BRAT diet, the bananas, rice, apples, and toast, which I think is a horrible idea for somebody with gluten sensitivity. Just like, I mean, even though rice and bananas may calm your UC flare, why are you still having them? Because there's something that you're doing consistently that's allowing your gut to be inflamed in an autoimmune fashion. And so I would argue that rice, even though it might give you some temporary relief during the flare, is probably part of the problem. If I had to choose between organic unrefined coconut oil and palm oil, what would you choose? I don't deal in hypotheticals where you give me 2 unhealthy things and ask me to choose the lesser of poisons. I don't eat the food that is going to damage me. That's the choice I'm going to make. Low grade temp, often feel bad in bed, blood work normal, didn't want meds, doing a 5-day water fast, thinking it might help. Day 5 fast, no improvement. Any suggestions? Get a good functional doctor, Biddy. You know, you know, low grade fever like that, you know, there's a million possibilities. It's hard to say what's going on. You got to get a good functional doctor who can help you understand and find the origin of the source of your problem. This is not a do-it-yourself project if you're dead sick and in bed and running fevers. Is there an enzyme we can use to rid our bodies of seed oils? No. Again, the way to rid is to remove. I just found out I have a possibly a Rathke cyst, cleft cyst in my pituitary gland. Is there a link that this could have caused my food sensitivities? No, probably the other way around, Jacqueline. You know, I would say inflammatory reactions from food sensitivities are more likely to have helped that cyst form than the opposite and the other way around. How can I test for chlorine in the body? There's not a great test for chlorine. My iodine is lowish. I swim all the time for exercise, but I have stopped to see if that's why my iodine is only slowly going up. That's a good theory, Nancy, and I would continue to pursue that, but there's not a great test for chlorine. Coconut sugar, is it better to replace with monk fruit or xylitol? I would say natural maple or natural honey might be a better replacement, something that's not refined or processed. High iron, go back up just a little bit on the left. There it is. High iron, not intercellular, just regular serum test. Besides stress, not high meat consumption nor genetic, what could be taken in consideration? Liver seems fine. You might have, I would retest it in a couple of months, Gaia, because it might just be a fluke. Sometimes iron can be a little elevated on a test where somebody's dehydrated. So I would look at that as a possibility as well. Trying to eat canned fish like sardines for nutrients. If they're all easily stored in olive oil, is that okay? I would try to get them packed in water versus oil would be my suggestion, Belinda. What would you recommend for, okay, I answered that one. Thoughts on carnivore for celiac and bowel disease? I think carnivore is an overly restrictive diet. It has its downside, the longer you're on it. Helena, I did an entire crash course on carnivore diets. If you want to go check that out, we can put a link up for you. Taking baby aspirin is highly recommended for over 65. Is turmeric better? Doctor advised me to take, but don't understand why not turmeric. It's a blood thinner. Taking baby aspirin is highly recommended for over 65, but it's bad advice. And the question is why over 65 does somebody need to thin their blood? Blood doesn't magically become thicker because you turn 65 versus say 64, 63, or any other age. Blood becomes thick because of bad choices. Your blood viscosity is largely based on your nutritional status and the food that you choose to eat. So taking any chemical to try to thin your blood isn't a fantastic idea. I think if you're eating healthy and exercising well, your blood is going to be thin enough. And that's my opinion on both turmeric and aspirin. Aspirin's a really bad idea because, 13,000 people every year die from the appropriate use of aspirin, which, if that were a nutritional supplement, it would have been pulled off the market decades ago, the way ephedra was pulled off the market for contributing to 10 deaths. Aspirin, 13,000 deaths a year. So turmeric, look, there's pros and cons to using turmeric, but you can cook and do some things with turmeric if you want to get it in. But to use it as a blood thinner, ask the deeper question: why is my blood not thin enough? And there are a number of reasons why that can happen: magnesium deficiency, omega-3 fatty acid deficiency. So there's so many essential nutrients that are necessary for healthy blood formation and healthy blood flow. And if you're not asking that question first and you're going for any kind of herbal or any kind of medication, it's just the wrong move to make first. Now, if you've had a heart attack and you're just trying to get some immediate thinning of your blood, certainly there are a lot of things that can help to do that. High doses, 4 to 8 grams a day of omega-3 can be helpful in that regard. Ginkgo biloba can be helpful. Turmeric and berberine can be helpful. Higher doses of magnesium, higher doses of vitamin E. There's an enzyme called nattokinase. There's a family of enzymes called proteolytic enzymes. So there's just a number of ways to approach urgent blood thinning needs. But again, at the end of the day, you got to find out why your blood got thick in the first place. Is cottonseed oil bad for human consumption? Yes. Have you addressed what product will bring down blood pressure? Raylene, I highly recommend you watch my crash course on blood pressure. This is not a magic pill. There's no magic pills, folks. If you haven't learned the theme watching my show, there's no such thing as magic pills. There's no magic Jack and the Beanstalk pill you can put in the ground and all of your problems get to go away. Your problems whether you want to believe it or not, and I'm not saying this to say to tell any of you you're bad people, but your health problems are your fault. Unless you inherit a genetic disease like cystic fibrosis or Down syndrome or the like, your health problems are your health problems because you're doing it wrong. And if you want to own that, then you can change it. And if you don't want to own that and you want to keep looking for the pill that will lower your blood pressure, or the pill that will help your cholesterol, or the pill that will help you sleep, or the pill that will take away your pain, these are what we call passive therapies. Passive therapies can work for a time, but they don't solve why the issue's there. And you really want to take ownership of your health so that you don't need all the pills, including supplements. Look, I mean, we offer a lot of supplements at Gluten-Free Society to help you on your journey, but at the end of the day, what do we want people to do first? We want them to take ownership over their choices. There's fundamental, what we call non-negotiable choices that you need to make in your daily life and that you need to think about in your daily life if you want to live healthy and require less pills. Number one, it's the right diet. Choose the right foods, whole foods, organic foods, non-poisoned foods, non-processed foods. Number two, sleep. You got to go to bed on time and you got to sleep adequate quantities of hours to heal and repair. Number three, exercise. Yes, it's important. Now, you don't have to go run marathons, but exercise consistently day in and day out is going to be an important part of your health. Number four, clean air. Filter the air in your home if you don't already. Number five, clean water. And number six, sunshine. And we can add a seventh, which is stress control, stress management. Look, if you do the first six things, you're going to control your biochemical stress. So you're already doing stress management by choosing those first six categories and approaching them appropriately. So at any rate, that's where you want to focus your time and attention. And if you're doing those things regularly, you should require a lot less pills because your body will react and respond in a healthy fashion. Is uncured bacon grease okay to use? Yeah, for the most part, and depending on what they fed the pig. Your feelings about how helpful red light and infrared light can be. Go outside and get all the free red light you want. In the winter months, if you don't have access, red light therapies can be fantastic to help you in that endeavor. But, you know, I try to go out every morning as part of my daily schedule. I spend time outside. And in the winter months, when that's not always available, I do have a red light that I use for that benefit. Let's scroll down on the right. Okay, we can take a few more. Are there any other pigs that eat grass besides kuni-kuni? I think so, but we chose kuni-kuni on our farm. But I look up Joel Salatino, or trying to remember his last name. I might be mangling it. But look up Joel from Polyface Farms. They do a fantastic job of raising pigs and other types of animals using regenerative agricultural techniques. And if you check out Polyface Farms, you'll find some great stuff. Actually, we have an interview with Joel. Maybe we can put that up too. Yeah, if you have a 400 LDL, 400 low density lipoprotein, which is your cholesterol or part of a cholesterol, would you recommend more granular testing? Yeah, I would recommend looking at your subparticles of cholesterol and also looking at your markers of inflammation. C-reactive protein, homocysteine, MMP, all good things to look at, as well as ESR, because cholesterol is not the problem, inflammation is. And if your cholesterol, your LDL is 400, you know, that now we're starting, okay, I would submit there can be some problems when it's that high, especially if you have ongoing inflammation on top of it. What's your take on ADHD? ADHD is a food problem and an environmental problem. A lot of ADHD is the wrong food. Kids eat horribly and parents allow it because of social pressure. And, you know, I don't know. I have a different take on parenthood than maybe a lot of people do, but I don't believe that children should be making their decisions around food. I believe that parents should parent the hell out of their kids and teach them what's right. If that were true, we wouldn't be in this situation. Look, I grew up where my mom would fill the freezer up on the summers with Dolly Madison discount snack cakes. And I was a fat little boy at 12 years of age. I was obese. And you know, that's part of my journey. And anyway, that did definitely affected my mind and my thoughts. And I think a lot of people who have been diagnosed with ADHD and ADD, they are eating poorly. And if they change their diet, their minds improve and their thoughts improve. POTS, positional vertigo. Oh, no, that's not a question. How do you feel about nutrition response testing? Don't waste your time. Should pancreatic elastase be rechecked if very low? Yeah, it's not a bad idea. Pancreatic elastase is very important for you to digest your food. Any thoughts on the GPOEM procedure to treat gastroparesis? I reversed my gastric bypass March 28th and worried I may have damage to my vagus nerve. Not really. I don't have any experience with that procedure, Adam, so can't speak intelligently about it. Okay. Are the tests on sale too? I think that was a question. Yeah, so this weekend, Memorial Day. Look, I'm a veteran and I love veterans. Appreciate all of you who have served our country, our great country. And this weekend is our biggest sale of the year. What is it, Memorial 24? Yeah, if you use promo code Memorial 24 when you shop at Gluten-Free Society, you'll save across the board on anything you buy. And that includes the laboratory testing. So if you're looking to get your nutrition status checked, or you're looking to get your food sensitivities looked at, or looking to just see if you have the genetics for gluten sensitivity, those are the 3 testing services that we offer. Then save the money. If it's in your budget, save the money this weekend. Take advantage of the sale. Okay. That's a wrap. I got to run. It's 10 after 12. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope you all have a fantastic Memorial Day weekend. If you found this information helpful, do me a couple of favors. Number 1, hit the like button. That helps. It helps the algorithms push this video out and share it with more people. Remember what our mission is. It's to help save 100 million lives. And I show up every week for you, so help me as well. Show up for me and hit that like button if you found this content helpful. Also, hit that share button. If you've got a family member that could benefit, share this video with them. And the third way you can support me is go to Gluten-Free Society, sign up there for our email. We'll send you a bunch of free information on diet and lifestyle changes, on how to overcome autoimmune disease. No matter what you have, no matter what autoimmunity it is, the information that we send you will have life-altering effects in a good way. So come over and sign up there. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. We'll see you on Tuesday for another episode of Dr. Osborne's Zone. Take care.